Welcome to the Always On podcast. I am your host, Duncan MacPherson. And on this podcast, our objective is to enable our audience, working, highly productive fee-for-service professionals, to ultimately always be working on themselves and working on their business. On today's podcast, I had a great chat with Ted Jenkin, a serial entrepreneur and a very high caliber financial professional, very well respected in the industry. And among other things, in this episode, we discussed how to achieve maximum enterprise value. Remember, every business is built to be sold, and every investment of effort you make contributes to that liquidity event. If you like this podcast, please like and share and tell your colleagues. And of course, we would love to hear any feedback you might have. Thanks for listening. Ted Jenkin, a legend. Thank you for joining us on Always On. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, especially because it's a continuation and a deeper dive into our last chat, the webinar where we talked about enterprise value and converting on a professional's life work to create that massive liquidity event when the time is right. So thanks very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Duncan.
Yeah, pleasure. And, I want to start off for people who are just getting to know Ted. What is your secret? Like, did you find a time machine? Because I don't know if I've ever met anybody who is as busy and has such a diverse portfolio of entrepreneurial pursuits. So what is the secret?
I chalk it up to genetics, Duncan. That's what it is. It's genetics. No, I think it's, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs, and I really believe that the busier that you are, the faster a pace that you can run. And entrepreneurs, much like myself, tend to be very regimented in their schedules. So, I exercise the same way every day, Duncan. I have the same breakfast every day. And I have this rule, and I really believe it makes me healthier, faster, than most other people. It's called my no white space rule, Duncan. And that means that I tell my staff person, if I see white space in my calendar, even for me to go to the bathroom, it's a problem. Now, some people don't like that, but it keeps me at that race car-ish type pace.
Relatable, but the only difference is I don't get to tell anybody anything about white space. They actually control it, and I just do as I'm told. So I admire the fact that you seem to still be at the helm there. Now, as a race car analogy, how close to red line do you feel you are?
Well, I mean, it depends on the week. If I'm traveling and I have to go from airport to hotel, I can definitely feel on that red line. But most days I really don't. I really believe that, your capacity as an individual, as you expand your comfort zone, you expand your box, you're able to take on more stuff. And I do believe if you hire the right operators to operate businesses or other parts of your business, then you expand your box to be even bigger. And so if people think it's just me, the truth is, Duncan, that there is a legion of tremendously helpful operations people and salespeople that I have underneath me that do a lot of the hard, heavy lifting.
Yeah, and I've been on the receiving end. You've got an incredible team, and they're very bought in. It doesn't seem like they are employees. They feel like they're really vested in the enterprise. They take a lot of pride, and they try hard. They respond quickly to emails. They focus on very precise execution. So clearly you've created a culture of not just speed and urgency, but also that precision. So very admirable. So we are going to talk today about time and how you give people the gift of time. We are going to talk about entrepreneurship. Yeah. I was talking to my niece not long ago, who is in an entrepreneurship program in college. And she asked me about my origins. And I just said, look, I never wanted to get a job. I wanted to create a job. And I wanted to create jobs for others and build something. And it's funny, along the way, I heard a great definition for entrepreneurship And somebody said that it was a French word for somebody who worked at home in their underwear, which is kind of funny. But really what an entrepreneur does is they want to build something and they want to create scale. And ultimately, they want to run a business that serves their life, not the other way around. And I know that you have entered into a stage in your life where you have a mentor protege dynamic. We're going to expand on that too. But any mentors that you had early on?
I did. No, listen, I was very fortunate in my first career in financial services to have two bosses. One of them, a guy named Larry Post, and he taught me a lot about the value of outworking your competition and the value of thinking big. And sometimes we get this as kids from our parents. I did not. But I was very fortunate to have an initial mentor in life, my early working time as an adult, who taught me the power of thinking big. And at that time, Duncan, when I started, thinking big was like, hey, kid, if you just do everything I tell you to do, within 2 years, you'll make $100,000. And I thought in the early 90s, 100,000 felt like a million. But he really taught me those values. And still today, there are a lot of those values and phrases and sayings that he taught me that I still carry with me.
Yeah, you're at that stage in your life, you're very impressionable. And I can relate to that too, because I still have just an absolute command for some of those early teachings. And again, like in your case, they weren't just all related to technical ability. They spoke to sort of the autodidactic approach to always on, working on yourself personally and professionally. And I know you personify that. At what point, was it early or a little later, where you realized that professional contrast did not just stem from your technical ability and your core competency, but there are all kinds of other dynamics that you had to pay attention to?
Well, I should have known this when almost every year in my management job with American Express, I almost got fired every year. And I kept going home and telling my wife, Duncan, I go, I don't understand it, honey. I think the bosses like me, but then every year I feel like I mess up or I screw up but I'm always on death row in corporate America. And it took me 15 years to realize that I didn't belong in that corporate box. And I should have known it a lot earlier. I should have seen the signs, but I was doing well in my corporate career. And it's hard to leave a W-2 job when you're making a high six-figure income. But I should have known it every year when they wanted to fire me every year for being the guy that was outside the box. And eventually, the day that I left and started becoming an entrepreneur, the light bulbs went on for me like a Major League Baseball stadium, that I hit the area where I should have been in, which is, really doing my own thing, my own way.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a time and a place for that Jack Welch maxim about firing the bottom 10% every year and just creating that sense of fear. But yeah, that is one thing about the corporate environment I wasn't a big fan of, is that I think, fear can be motivating, but it also can be suppressing. And in the pursuit of, self-actualization, I think environment's got a it's a big driver there. I wanted to ask you, because you are so entrepreneurial in your focus, you're in Georgia. Tom Stanley, author of The Millionaire Next Door, is from Georgia. For many financial professionals, that is the ideal client, right? The first generation self-made business owner, professional, executive. Nobody gave them anything. They've earned it, the proverbial 25-year overnight success story. In the spirit of the law of attraction, do you find that being an entrepreneur makes you more attractive to an entrepreneurial client?
Oh, 100%, and I can tell you this because I remember when I worked for corporate America, Duncan, trying to Google myself, and I found nothing. And I started to ask myself, do I even exist? And it dawned on me that when you're a corporate SVP, EVP, largely you're a ghost. You're a cog in the machine. And what entrepreneurs are really attracted to are people to me, in their community especially, that are focused on building businesses that help the community. You add more jobs, you sponsor little leagues or concert halls. You're involved in the festivals and fairs, and when you become a public of local matter, a person of interest in that local matter, other entrepreneurs are attracted because they're all trying to strive for the same thing. And so I found once I became a local entrepreneur in Atlanta, I very quickly met other entrepreneurs. And yes, they did want to use me as an advisor because I could utterly relate to their situation, where I think a lot of W-2 people that work for brokerage houses doesn't mean they're a bad advisor. They're probably great advisors, but they don't have that same kinsmanship that I had with other entrepreneurs.
Well, I think part of that is also because something that's very attractive is you think about some of that, what goes into the X factor: resilience, grit, self-motivation, vision, and it's palpable. So back in the day, especially in that interlude between corporate and entrepreneurship, I'm sure there was some adversity. And I'm sure that served you well. But as I've said to my wife, adversity is only cool after you've overcome it. Right? While you're in it, it is not fun. But how did that work out for you and serve you?
Well, look, it was scary as hell running a business, and I quit $1 million job to go make zero. So you try to explain that on the home front, it's not so easy. But I can tell you, I really learned one of the biggest lessons as an entrepreneur. And it really got me thinking about what it means to be a business owner through mistakes that I made. And when I was a year into the business, my payroll company, and I thought I was doing the best thing. I hired a payroll company that was cheap, and they said they get it done easy, fast, and quick. Well, it turned out to be a payroll company that absconded all of my money, all of the payroll taxes we paid. I never knew that a payroll company had to be bonded and licensed and all these other things. I just thought a payroll company took your payroll and sent it to the IRS, and we lost $40,000 that we had to pay to the IRS twice, really. We paid it once to our payroll company that stole it, and then once to the IRS. And, you started to really learn not only what to ask yourself, but like truly becoming a business person. Until you get sued or you lose money, you don't know what it's like to be a business person. You really don't. And I learned quickly how that looked like from losing that money. And I learned to ask entrepreneurs about other questions like that. Not this stuff we see on TV with the Shark Tank, like, I'm going to sell my company for $5 million. It's the grind of like, well, what do you put in an employment contract? And, what should my policy handbook say? And what payroll company should I hire? And a lot of entrepreneurs like myself, we just learn the hard way, Duncan. You just, you get pounded.
Well, and again, the distinction, I mean, corporate America, the corporate environment is a good fit for certain people. But again, that entrepreneurial client, they don't want to surround themselves with people who operate in a world of theory, that get caught up maybe in some of the pettiness of political maneuvering and things like that. They want authenticity, and they want experiential wisdom, right? Not just knowledge. And it's funny, I had a really powerful moment with my wife a couple of days ago, because my wife, her mantra for me is, I'm always right eventually. Right. But there's some times where the lag is painful. But I think she's there because she was at a yoga retreat with some friends, and she told me this. She goes, everybody at this yoga retreat was asked, what do you appreciate? And she was the only one in the group who said, I appreciate my husband.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what, that's probably the most powerful thing I've heard in a long time. And I think that has to come. It has nothing to do with my intellect or my knowledge. I think it has a big part of the fact that I'll do no harm. I won't quit. And I'll just persevere. And those qualities are so compelling. And again, especially with that 25-year overnight success story. So that's powerful. And I didn't realize that you had, because 40 grand back then,
40 grand.
That probably felt at that point like 400,000. Right. I mean, It's a big number when you're just getting rolling. And again, being portrayed by, that type of entity, it just doesn't seem like it's possible.
Yeah, well, we had that, Duncan, and then we had not shortly after that, we had a woman that was at our front desk who who basically, I thought she was drinking water every day, but it turned out the water was vodka in her little sippy bottle. And I always wondered why in the late afternoon she would slur some of the inbound calls until one day she fell down the front steps of the building and busted her nose open. And dealing with these things, like people think they deal with it in corporate America, you don't. You got a legal department, you got an HR department, there are ancillary resources and manuals. Everything's put together in a bow. When you're an entrepreneur, you've got to build the whole package. And, you're either going to talk to other entrepreneurs and figure it out, or you're just going to do it and make mistakes. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs hang out with other entrepreneurs, because they're like, I know you made mistakes and I know I made them. Let's talk about what each other knows. And those conversations are a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the absence of a safety net means that you have to be just always on, right? Always on it, just absolutely focused and aware, and optimistic, but with a little bit of skepticism around external dependency. So, Ted, favorite books?
Well, I guess it depends on what I'm reading. I have to tell you, I don't read a lot of fiction. I read mostly nonfiction, some management. On the management side, I like a book called First Break All the Rules, because I was a guy who broke a lot of those rules as an entrepreneur by a guy named Marcus Buckingham. I love a book called Learned Optimism. I don't believe optimism is you're inherently born with it. I believe you can learn it. And so I just choose not to have very many down days. I love Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. It's probably one of my favorite books by far, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. These are timeless classics that I'll read every couple of years. But I mostly will read nonfiction now, because I do a lot of TV stuff. I read more stories every day than I do books. I'll read a handful during the year. But those are some good ones.
Yeah, those are all great books, and I do on the practical and the quantitative and the skill development. But yeah, as I get a little older, I started embracing like The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh yeah,
as a novel, right? Obviously, it's just an absolute classic, but in getting immersed in a story where you start to understand the dynamic between free will and God's will, and trying to make sense of all that, just like Les Miserables, Atlas Shrugged. I mean, these are very, very compelling. And I think a lot of the lessons there are subconscious, because they're not lectures. They're not trying to deliberately teach you something. You're just trying to get caught up in that story.
Duncan, I was going to tell you, because I am a marketing guy, probably my favorite marketing book is by a guy named Dan Ariely, and it's called Predictably Irrational. And for any advisor that's listening to this or watching this, Predictably Irrational is a great book, because it helps you understand the predictable nature on how people make decisions on anything, and why they're always irrational, and in the way that you price your services and how you market yourself. You could be favored favored in terms of the way you run your business if you read that book. And I love guerrilla marketing. It's the like military guerrilla marketing, but I'm a guerrilla marketer by nature, and I probably always will be.
That's powerful. I had not heard of Predictably Irrational, but just the way you described it makes perfect sense. And it's interesting. You talk about learned optimism. That's a fascinating study. So is learned helplessness.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And that, I first learned that the metaphor was when I think it was in India, when a baby elephant was born, to convert that to a beast of burden, they would tie a rope around its back right leg and fasten it to a spike. and it would try to get away, but it would tug and couldn't move. Then as this elephant becomes this immense creature, as long as it's feeling that cord around its leg, it doesn't even try, right? It's just been imprinted. And I think that's a fascinating study. Learned optimism, we have to be optimistic as entrepreneurs, but we also, to your point about what predisposes people, why they make decisions, why they don't. Learned helplessness is a fascinating study too.
Yeah,
But
aren't you a Rush fan? Are you a Rush fan? The band
Oh,
Rush?
please.
Right. So then
Canadian.
It's like if you choose not to choose, then you've made a choice, right?
Come on. I've got a tear in my eye. I'm going to go listen to Red Barchetta after this. Yeah, don't get me started on Rush. Okay. Geez, what a curveball.
Yes.
Yeah. Well said. And by the way, it was that album Anthem and Neil Peart that coincidentally lined up with what a friend was saying that got me onto Atlas Shrugged.
Is that right?
Yeah. Because of the whole objectivism. Anyway, enough on that, but that's a fascinating study too. Okay, so as an entrepreneur, when you got rolling, because you started from zero, when you got rolling and you started hitting your stride, what were your ratios in terms of organic growth between attracting new clients through marketing versus introductions from influencers, clients, strategic partners? What were your ratios?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, obviously, it was a very little amount of referrals. I mean, it might have only been 10%. It was 90% what I was doing on radio, blogging, digital marketing, social media, television. Now we're probably 80% inbound referrals. In fact, today I literally, it's the craziest thing. I can say this today. This is fact. We had a meeting of a woman we got referred to today, Duncan, and this company here got sold in Atlanta called Patient Co. And she was the chief revenue officer. So she showed us her pay stub and her options, and she's going to make about $10 million this year. And she went through the whole meeting and she hired us, said that this was no experience she ever had before. And 15 minutes later in our website was a guy that said, I got referred from this woman. She said she just met with you and I should be doing business with you too. Another guy that was a top guy in that company. I mean, that is as powerful as it can possibly get.
When you really get into the key performance indicators around advocacy, when you start getting introductions from a new client who's literally been on board for hours or days, or when you get an introduction from a prospective client who's still in your fit process, it hasn't even gotten to the signing ceremony yet, that is incredibly powerful. That tells you that you've got professional contrast and that X factor. That's the art and science of organic growth, right?
Well, I've always believed in this term that you've talked about, and I know that you'll coach people on this idea of advocacy. Having apostles that really they want to, without anybody doing anything, they want to send people to your company. And we when you talk about the numbers at 80%, it's going to end up being around 320 referral clients this year. 320. And it's just remarkable because of all the things that we do, and it has zero to do with money management. Zero. Nothing. I don't cite not one referral, but it has to do with the brand and the way we position ourselves and our service and our care and concern for our customers. And that makes them want to tell our story because we have a story.
Okay, but I wouldn't say it's zero. I'm sure every prospective client is vetting you before they meet you, and they're coming to their own conclusions as they kick your tires that you've got the technical goods. So by the time they do get in front of you, for a conversation, they're that much more predisposed, because back to your point about advocacy, if I refer someone to you, I've already sung your praises. I already steered them to how they can get to know you on LinkedIn, your website,
Right.
any resources. The strength of my endorsement, it primed the pump to such a degree. By the time they're working through the relationship cycle beyond trust to action, now they want to know about how being around you makes them feel as they start to look down the road at the lifetime of the relationship. So I would agree with you, it's zero when you're in front of them, because it's already been addressed.
Right. Right.
And you're right about advocacy. I've always said, and this is a profound insight in my view, is that an advocate does not refer someone to you because they're trying to help you grow your business. They feel they're doing the friend a disservice if they don't make the introduction, because of the unmet needs and the problems that need to be solved. And they see the alignment of interest, they see the introduction, they make the introduction rather, and they expect nothing in return. And yes, they're obviously inclined, they want to see you succeed, but that's not the driving force. So all this crazy nonsense in the referral world where people say, hey, who else do you know? I'm trying to grow my business. I get paid in 3 ways and it's a tremendous compliment. Okay, fair enough. But the best in this business don't go there, right?
No, we never have to ask for referrals. They just happen. And I love that you mentioned this professional contrast, because I think about it too in terms of brand contrast, right? That most advisors, the story of their business is not very memorable. So in order for someone to be able to refer, they've got to have something memorable, or really, sort of have a love mark of why they want to share that company's story. And our whole Oxygen, yes, I did a play on letters of the XYG being capitalized, but to this day, it matters. And the things that you do build your story. Duncan, I had to get my tire changed today. I had a bubble in my tire, and I went into this company here called Butler Tire. And they got the tire fixed in my car, and I was paying, and I put down my Oxygen Financial credit card. And the guy at the desk looks at my card. He stares at it for a second. He goes, Oxygen Financial? He goes, you're the guys on the radio all that years here in Atlanta? And I said, I was that guy. He goes, guys, this was the guy who was on the regular guys here in Atlanta. And it's like, you don't even realize when you're out there telling your story and getting people to share that story, like it could be years before somebody makes that action, but having that story to tell is so powerful in my mind for people getting referred. And this guy in the thing in here, I'm going to set him up with one of our guys for an appointment. He's like, I got to come see you. I was like, it's just like nutty, this stuff that happens.
Well, isn't that fascinating? First of all, so much there. First of all, you mentioned the name of the tire shop, Butler.
Yeah.
Because you know that if somebody listening to this goes to Butler, they're going to make you look good. Because Butler's going to come through.
They're the best.
Okay, so that's advocacy. So you are crystal clear about how the introduction is going to reflect on you because of how they conduct themselves. Okay, that is very, very powerful. But to your point about stage of readiness, classic Confucius, right? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Right. You don't know how long that lag is going to go. But hey, when you're authentic, you stir the pot and you're at peace with the outcomes, that's where karma and the universe starts to get activated. I will say something. It's interesting because Chris Jepson introduced me to you.
That's right.
Right. So Chris Jepson also introduced me to Randy Schwantz, who wrote the book, The Wedge, where he basically says, look, for you to get hired, someone's got to get fired. Like chances are a prospective client that you're in front of is not starting from zero. They're already pretty far down the track. They've just grown disillusioned with their current provider. So your ability to activate contrast in their heart and their head, okay, because as easy it is to leave a long-term provider you're disillusioned with, it's always easier not to leave. It's always easier to revert back to the status quo. But when they're motivated because of the introduction and because the professional or the brand contrast, as you would say, is so palpable, then, making that call to the soon to be former provider, hey, nothing personal, it's just time for a change, right? But they come to their own conclusions. That's in essence the law of attraction professionalized, right, in business. When did it occur to you that enterprise value in your business could be completely engineered without limits?
Well, I had always thought, and even when I was helping people sell practices in the early 2000s, that our business sort of had this ring around it that you could get 2 to 3 times on your business recurring revenue, maybe 1 times commission. And I've seen a lot of practices get bought and sold at those levels. Sometimes only at the 1 times level, but the first time that I started having conversations with private equity companies, and mind you, I had helped clients with their businesses go to private equity companies and sell them, but I had never thought about, selling to a private equity company myself. And when I had those conversations and they started a dialogue about the multiples, it dawned on me in general as an industry, how much we have undersold the value of what we are building. And it's almost like, I almost think, Duncan, like, who told us this story that we should be at 2 to 3 times recurring revenue? Who made that up? Because we're like a business. Most practices are at a 50-60% margin. It's 90% plus recurring revenue. That, there are SaaS models and software that sell for 50 times multiple. What are we doing at 2 times? What a huge mistake. And it opened my eyes up in a big way in the last 3 years. My eyes are getting bigger.
Ted, I was guilty of that. I mean, it was an accepted norm forever that 2 to 3x. I mean, is that not learned helplessness?
Yes, it is.
We just accepted that. And then all of a sudden, I mean, granted, the world has evolved quite dramatically, and relative to other opportunities, this business, especially, and I know you've got a really robust checklist around, clean books, fee for service, not transactional, proprietary process. Like, these are some of the X factor dynamics that take somebody from 2 to 3x to 6x plus. But what I really love about the conversations we've had is the credibility. Like, you're not talking in a world of theory.
No.
Like, on multiple layers. First of all, another accepted norm was, if I'm a financial advisor and I built a business that eventually I want to entrust with somebody else and I want a liquidity event, the assumption was the only buyer was another financial professional. But you had a breakthrough on that, not just on the multiplier, but on who the addressable audience was.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. We had a big private equity firm called Warburg Pincus that basically bought our broker dealer, and the company had started a new division there called Blue Spring, which was an M&A division. And they said, "Hey, would you think about selling your practice?" And I thought at the time I wasn't really ready to sell all of Oxygen because it's kind of my baby. But I sure wouldn't mind getting out of the day-to-day of just sitting with clients and having to talk to them about their portfolios. And I said, yeah, let's have the conversation. And then when they went through it, they said, I realized how important it was to keep your books. Fortunately, I kept good books, but a lot of advisors, their books are messy. They're not even done in QuickBooks or somewhere that's easy to compile the data. And when they came back at multiples that were at that super high number you were mentioning, I thought I must have been like on candid camera, what, this can't be right. Have I been living in a foreign country? And sure enough, I was like, well, lawyers look at it, and I did, and I'm like, what's the catch? And there really wasn't a catch. And when I made my own transaction, it's part of what I feel like in this industry. I'm that person out there today, I want to help other advisors achieve their dreams as well. And whether they do it with me or they don't, let's help educate you about the real world if you're going to do something.
Well, that's a perfect segue because not only did you crack the code on the B2C, right, the business to client organic growth model, and you saw a tremendous outcome there. Now you've made the shift in terms of a mentor protege dynamic to the B2B world, where you are helping financial professionals not reinvent the wheel and replicate or even better your success. And funny you should say foreign country, because you're even stirring the pot up here in Canada as well.
Yes.
But so you're now a merchant of multipliers.
I put that on my business card.
Yeah. Well, it'd be thought provoking if nothing else. Like, what is that? But so you've taken your experience, because yeah, you're right. I mean, somebody hears 6, 8, 10x on their life's work. That's going to provoke some instant skepticism. I mean, people want to believe, but they're going to be disbelieving. But you've done it. And now, in the spirit that you're a serial entrepreneur, that is an enterprise that you are driving, where you will show a financial professional how to, whenever their timing lines up, 12 months, 6 months, 3 years, 5 years out, how to get on a trajectory to a multiplier. So your IP, what percentage of it came from your own experience with Warburg Pincus, and what percentage has now been the fact that you are deliberately refining and optimizing that playbook?
I mean, I think it's probably 50-50, half of it just going through it, having a transaction. I've been an employee now of the private equity company, so seeing what it's like on the other end of it now that I'm almost 3 years into it, because I did a 3-year deal on mine, and I'm almost done with my 3 years. So all the fears that I had when I signed my name on a piece of paper, I can answer those fears in a much better and easier way for advisors now that I've gone through it. But also, having done many deals so far and in the midst of other conversations, I've got a much larger view of the landscape of what's out there, and different companies acquire and operate for different reasons. Some of them want you to become their brand. Some of them want only RIAs. Some of them want ensemble practices only. Every PE company has got a slightly different model. Some of them are publicly traded companies, and some of them are private. So I've learned a lot about that. And if you consider the fact that an advisor who's taking their life's work and trying to sell it and trying to do it on their own, that is extremely dangerous if you're trying to maximize your value, because if you've never gone through a negotiation and had to interview 10 private equity companies, you may not even know what questions to ask, or what could be on the table, or the way that the contracts are written. And these are all very important things if you're looking to protect yourself and your family and maximize the value of what you've built.
Not unlike trying to sell your house on your own. I
Right.
mean, as soon as you get into the weeds, and especially at that point between intent and consent, you got the emotions, you got the complexity, and there are a lot of things that go sideways. And so your process for engaging with an advisor and navigating them through, because here's the thing, and this just occurred to me, as a contrarian, there's actually 3 profound distinctions. Number one, who the acquirer could be might not be what you think. Number 2, the multiplier possibilities, probably more than you thought. And number 3, you don't have to leave. You don't have to ride off into the sunset. You can stick around. And as you and I discussed in that previous webinar you and I did, the liberation that experience created for you, you've probably never been as effective at what you do since you've been after that transaction. Is that safe to say?
Oh yeah, yeah, and happy too. This some of the happiest times I can remember in my whole life. Just where I'm at right now, not only professionally but just personally. Obviously, financially, I mean, if I don't want to come to work again, I don't have to. But I'm coming to work because I want to leave a legacy in this industry. I want to make a change on people's lives. You know, I want to help more people. I've always had this philosophy of I call it connecting without expecting. It's one of my favorite phrases because I want to help people and I don't want anything in return. You know, it all works itself out in the end. And so there are a lot of people that may listen to this, or they were on the webinar you and I did, or heard me somewhere else and took my ideas and they made a lot of money on it, and good for them. I'm happy for them. You know, I help somebody do better. It's not everything is a tit for tat, right? But there's no question about it that it's the best headspace I've been in my whole life.
And notwithstanding everything that's going on in the world, not a lot of people can say that right now. I mean, here we are, we're in the tail end of 2021, probably the most bizarre force majeure I've ever experienced. I'm sure you as well. And yet, this is what it revealed. So,
but Duncan, I want to say that you made a really good point in here for people that are listening to this or watching it, which is that, you know, you kind of have to decide whether you're 38 or you're 68, you know, what you're building and what you want to get out of the practice, financially speaking, and maybe for your clients and for your staff, if and when you decide to make some exit. And you are absolutely right that all of these companies would love nothing more than for you to stay on the books forever. There's only a few of them that might say, we want you gone in a year or 3 years, but most of them, they don't have to buy your whole business. They could buy part of it. You can still maintain majority if you want to. And if you want to stay on for another 10 years, great. But a savvy entrepreneur, which I think a lot of financial advisors are not, Duncan. And I say this knowing a lot of financial advisors are going to watch this.
sure.
I think they're probably great as a practitioner, but not that savvy business-wise, is that you have to know, just like you would tell your clients with their own stock in publicly traded companies, when's it time to change your asset allocation? When's it time to de-risk a little bit and take some chips off the table? And you need to know that yourself because, you know, money doesn't just grow in perpetuity like this forever. Stock market's going to not run like this forever. Interest rates may never be this low again. Liquidity may never be this high again. You know, you have to factor that all in as a business person. And Duncan, it's part of why I did what I did. I didn't escape from all my business ventures, nor did I escape entirely from oxygen. I just carved out a piece of my business and sold it because it made perfect sense to me for a lot of reasons to de-risk. All right. And I wasn't enjoying it. That helped too. But you know, you know, as a business person, you have to think of that. And I think when you do, you become a better advisor to your clients because you can tell them, I did this, and let me tell you why it makes sense for you. And that's why a lot of business owners come to me in Atlanta now. I'm in the midst of becoming a business broker, Duncan, for regular businesses because I have clients that own architect firms and HVAC companies that are like, Ted will know what to do. Will I always? No, I don't always know what to do, but they trust me that I will figure out how to get it done and get it done in their best interest. And I will. And that's, I get so fired up every morning getting up and doing this because of that.
Well, you think of that old cliche, the shoe cobbler's children have no shoes.
Right.
You're right. The most enlightened financial professionals run their business like a business, but they're also lifelong planners, not just for their clients, but for themselves, their own team, their own legacy, and not reinventing the wheel. This is all a form of risk management because, you know, I've always been so optimistic, but then I heard Clint Eastwood say, a man's got to know his limitations. So then around that time, I saw Andy Grove's book, Only the Paranoid Survive.
Yeah, I love that book.
And I'm thinking, I'm not paranoid, but this guy seems to have figured a few things out. Maybe I need to understand that side of the mindset. And not unlike managing money, if risk management and asset management are not completely hand in glove, then the plan is flawed. So what you're in essence saying is maximize the management of the potential sale of this asset, probably the most substantial asset you own, and understand the risks that are involved in that to maximize the outcome. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Design it and define it in a way that serves your life, right? That's self-interest in terms of purity of capitalism that I think I've ever heard. So let's keep going here. So let me stop for a second. If somebody listening in is at a stage in their life where they're looking down the road, saying, okay, I love what I do, but I should probably get out in front of this, then you need to speak with Ted. It might not go any further than just an initial conversation, but just have that chat around some of the things you need to consider: blind spots, gaps, and motivations. And don't reinvent that wheel. So have that conversation with Ted and see where it goes. And we'll give you contact information at the end here. And you can find Ted on LinkedIn because he's very active, as am I. So let's keep going here. So you're a merchant of multipliers. That's terrific. You're also a merchant of time, which means you have a clearly defined process to help a financial professional put more sand in their hourglass. So we've talked before about, okay, what does a financial professional manage? They manage money, they manage risk, they manage a business, they manage people, they manage clients. But then the fallacy is they manage time. They don't manage time. The clock is relentless. They manage how they allocate their time. Okay, so you and I have talked about how someone can get the gift of more time when they're clear on how they allocate their time. So typical financial professional works 45 hours a week. They spend 15 hours managing what's commoditized. That's money and assets and all of that technical side. They manage 15 hours managing their business, managing their team, and all of those different elements. And they spend 15 hours a week managing their clients. As a B2B deliverable, a financial professional can get out of the wealth management business. And by that, I mean, they could outsource the commoditized to you. You would elevate their client experience because you've gone so far beyond this sort of households and holdings models, households and holdings approach and mindset. You're all about platforms and models. So somebody could elevate the client experience in that respect by outsourcing that to you. And you could simultaneously give them your practice management and relationship management approach. They could invest that 15 hours into their business, into their clients, and unlock another level of organic growth and enterprise value. Do you want to elaborate on that? Because that to me is profound.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talked to an advisor the other day who was interested in selling their practice, and I never heard of whatever stock picking method that they have before. It was some weird method, and they said, well, somebody would need to learn my method or it wouldn't work. And I said, hey, I'd just be honest with you. You're gonna have a really hard time selling your practice, and the longer you do that, you're gonna devalue what you own. Because when it's so specialized like that, nobody's gonna wanna buy it because they're gonna have to change all of your clients to whatever they're doing. So I learned after a while, we came up with a very simple model. We call it part Warren Buffett, part Jimmy Buffett. And the Warren Buffett is sort of our buy and hold piece because that's his favorite time period to hold forever. And the Jimmy Buffett says it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. And Duncan, I went to a very large company based out of Chicago who has very, very successful CFAs called First Trust Portfolios. And I said, hey, you guys have the number one rated economist in the United States, a guy named Brian Westbury. And I said, how would you feel of like helping me build models where I can leverage your CFAs so I don't have to hire two of them? We can co-brand our own model through First Trust, and then I don't have to worry about the money management. And you know what their answer was, Duncan? They said, we would love to do that. And we went through it so everything didn't feel proprietary, if you will. And it's great. Clients love it. They love the story. We have access to the CFAs. We have access to a company that's really aligns with our values. They're very innovative and creative with the products they bring to the marketplace. I happen to really admire and respect the CEO, and it's been a great partnership. So we manage those models for clients. They created us qualified and non-qualified models. They help us rotate it on a quarterly basis. But am I technically managing the money? No. Do clients care? Actually, they like it, Duncan. Not only do they not care, they like it that there's sort of like a check and balance with a money management company that works in conjunction with our thought process in creating those models. And it has worked out fantastic. It's been amazing.
Well, the thing I love, obviously, about that branding is instantly it would resonate with someone. Like if I'm a client of yours, Ted, I don't need to know everything you know. I just need to know that you know. And when you speak to me in a way where, okay, clearly you've got the blue chip technical ability, but money is a means to an end. You're speaking to my aspirations. And then through affiliation, obviously, with a firm of that caliber, it just puts me at ease. And it's not promissory on performance. It's promissory on an experience. This is what it means to be our client. This is our mindset. This is our philosophy. This is our approach. So what's interesting is, so this is a conduit. This is a bridge. So let's say I'm that 38-year-old financial professional. I'm not really thinking about enterprise value. I'm not really thinking about a liquidity event, but I am going to buy into Covey's begin with the end in mind. I'm going to buy into the fact that, okay, every investment of effort I make contributes to my enterprise value and all of those force multipliers. So this is a conduit for them. It's a way for them to test the waters with Ted Jenkin. I might empower you in 10 years to help me sell my business or take some money off the table. But in the meantime, I can outsource my asset management to you, your clearly defined collaborative approach. And so now you're a merchant of liberation. You're liberating me to invest more into what's proprietary, not commoditized. And along the way, you might give me 52 3-day weekends. I can work on my life, work on my relationships, work on my other aspirations. That's pretty powerful.
I think so. And I think long-term as the industry is evolving, that if you think about a poker hand, your aces are in advice and service, not in money management, right? And people have probably heard this before, but you're either an asset manager or an asset gatherer, and the real way you build enterprise value is not by asset management. And if you were going to do that, you might as well sell your practice and just go be a money manager somewhere and not have clients, right? Or go work for one of these fund companies or ETF companies. But if you're an advisor, you need to understand how they work. Of course, you have to explain those to clients, but you want to be focused on building out your brand, the service level, and the advice that you give. That's the real demarcation line, not can you beat the S&P 500.
Well, and I've got my own frame for that. I call it the C-suite. Okay, so the C-suite is, okay, you're a CFO, you manage money. What in that can you outsource to elevate? But that's just one of the C's. There's 5 C's. There's CEO. You manage a business. Run the business like a business. Think in those terms: enterprise value, client experience. You're a COO. operations, best practices. You're a CMO, marketing, business development, and you're a CIO, information. And what you're managing is you're managing the information the clients entrust you with about their lives, their fears, their aspirations. The advisors that crush it treat all 5 of those C's with the same level of importance. And to your point, and I wanted to mention this around outsourcing. So the scar tissue from the payroll company, that's long healed. So your aversion to outsourcing has been addressed.
I outsource, but I'm still bitter about it.
So too soon.
No. Yeah. Well, it's still better, but I mean, we make a lot less mistakes today. Let's say it that way.
Well, again, what happens to us makes us, right? So that, I've said to people I know that I had to go through my adversity to get anywhere near self-actualization. Plateau avoidance is something we're all mindful of. And sometimes those speed bumps or those valleys, they need to happen to propel us. So the concept of outsourcing, are you at a point with Oxygen on the organic side? Have you maxed out on the outsourcing? Have you figured out all the different things that you need to outsource so you're not having anybody on your bench major and minor things for transacting and things that they shouldn't be doing?
I mean, I'm sure there's more things that we can do over time. I mean, we haven't outsourced planning yet. I've looked at a bunch of those models for somebody to just crank out the financial plans, but we still do those in-house. The marketing has pretty much got itself set. The money management is set. I don't really think about that at all. Obviously technology is a big issue for us. We're constantly evaluating what technology platforms, make sense in the business and the ones that can give us the biggest bang for our buck or give us a differentiator along the way. But probably planning would be the next one if I did it, because we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of staff people that crank out plans every year. Is that the best thing relative to outsourcing to companies? Because we use e-money that could do e-money plans. I'd have to look at that.
Well, a bit of semantics, but the distinction between a financial plan, which is generally template driven and pretty straight ahead, creating that blueprint, the distinction between a financial plan and financial planning, the proactive future pacing of planning, that is ultimately what makes a financial professional fee worthy and will decommoditize their value, because they're always getting the clients focused on trajectory and how needs evolve and become more complex later in life. We're out in front of that. So perhaps outsourcing the plan fully and completely can liberate to go deeper into the planning, the goals-based planning and things like that. But you bring up an interesting point. You've cracked the code on marketing, social, right? Search engine optimization, all of these different elements, advocacy. So if I'm a financial professional listening in, I'm in the peak of my life, but maybe I'm cresting a little bit. They could ultimately draft in behind you to adopt all of these different procedures along the C-suite. So they're not working harder. They're not spinning their wheels. So in essence, what you're saying is they could consider the merit of becoming part of the Oxygen community?
Yeah, I mean, first, I would tell people that if I had to say anything on being on Duncan's program today, there is no higher paid job anywhere in the world than marketing. There just isn't. And it doesn't matter, Tiger Woods at one time was arguably the best golfer in the world. He got paid $10 million a golf, but he got paid $100 million in endorsements. Bill Gates made great software, but he got Microsoft into 90% of the households in America. If you could do that, you'd be as wealthy as Bill Gates, right? So the trick is figuring out marketing. And there's no way to get around this, Duncan. Marketing is either spending time or spending money or an exchange of both. And financial practitioners on the whole, and I've talked to thousands of them, you probably more than me, but I've met a lot of them. The biggest thing they skimp on in their practice is marketing. they spend the least amount of time, and they spend the least amount of money. And that is where the business is made. Forget about financial advice. Forget about money management. The business is made in marketing. Rick Edelman, he's arguably one of the most successful guys in our industry. I knew him when he was on the radio in Washington, D.C. in the early 90s. He's been a tremendous marketer. Ken Fisher, the largest RIA in the country, 125 billion under management. Well, if you run $5 million of commercials on CNBC, you're probably going to do better as well. But, most advisors are either don't have the will or they don't have the skill to be able to do that. And if you don't, I've basically built out, to a degree, a franchise type model. It's short of being a franchise, but it looks like that. Affiliate with us. You own your business for the large part. We own a little bit of it. We give you most of the pay. We get a little bit of it like a franchise would. And we plug and play all of the systems that we have built at what I think is a very fair price. There's a reason that people buy UPS stores and they buy Dunkin' Donut stores, because they know they work. I know what we do works. So I don't care if you're in Seattle, Washington, or you're in Miami, Florida. If you can't figure it out yourself and you're willing to forego your name on the door and just put oxygen, we can make it happen. Not everybody wants to do that, Duncan, but if they do, I think we've got a great model to help you take your business to the next level. Of course, I recommend, as we do, having a good coach on your side. I think we know somebody good who does that. And having those two things in place, the marketing, the coaching, and having a plug and play system, you'll just accelerate faster.
Well said, but I think we might have glanced off the whole marketing conversation a bit too fast. My favorite authority in advertising and marketing was David Ogilvy.
Yeah.
And David Ogilvy said, 50% of all advertising is wasted. We just don't know which half. And what's interesting about that comment, and people have a tough time putting their finger on what makes good marketing or branding. So basically, and this is something I want everybody to hear, is Ted is process driven when it comes to marketing and branding. There's no pixie dust. There's no silver bullets. There's no spray and pray. Let's hope for the best. It is airtight because it's fully defined, refined, and process driven. I want everybody to understand that, because the thing about being franchise ready, like you talk about UPS, you talk about Donut Shop or whatever the case may be. I buy a franchise like that, I'm buying a job. I'm buying a ball and chain, and I'm buying a self-imposed limitation. I'm on a collision course with a plateau. That the person I'm buying the franchise from, they're getting scale. They're getting liberation and order.
Right.
I'm a cog. The beauty of a fee-for-service professional, and in an environment like yours, there's no limitation. How high is high? And if you liberate someone because you're process driven, especially in the marketing, if the highest paid job is that of a marketer and a branding authority, and you've got that plug and play. So what you're saying is, if I'm an advisor, you're going to liberate me to go out and do what I get paid to do. You just unshackled me. That's powerful.
I mean, I think so. In our system, even think about the podcast we're doing today. For an advisor to pull off a podcast on their own, it's very, very difficult. I built a turnkey podcast that we're just about to launch in Denver and Savannah and our offices as well. But it's an entrepreneur podcast, but it's the greatest biz dev idea I ever came up with for entrepreneurs. And it's called the Shrimp Tank. It's not called the Shark Tank. And we've done more than 1,000 episodes nationwide right now, and it's done tremendously well. So that's an example of a turnkey thing. The social media that we do in every city, so you don't have to think about it, and it runs like clockwork. While it still portrays our brand, but it actually brings out your personality and the things that you're doing locally in your city. Many big companies, Duncan, don't know how to regionalize their marketing. And we understand as a firm that there's some part of nationalizing the brand, but also making sure that the marketing regionally makes sense, because the way you'd market to somebody in Phoenix might be different than in Boston. In terms of the commentary, or whether we show more sports or we show more about lifestyle, those kinds of things we understand. Turnkeying the market commentary and the Sunday papers that go out, having a 1,000 white papers that you can use. I mean, these kinds of things, turnkey webinars and seminars and mail copy. You're at the end, it's like I said, you're either going to have to spend money to outsource it or spend your time to figure it out. Or like, a place like us, you're giving up a small percentage of your pay, but if you're really a business person, you get it. You get how it adds that value to intrinsically grow your own enterprise value.
Well, what's interesting about branding is the force multiplier that can come from a brand within a brand, right? 1+1 can equal a lot. And, one thing I've noticed over the years, I'm sure you have too, is that somebody who makes $500 an hour does not do $50 an hour activities.
No.
And they do not take chances with their time trying to reinvent the wheel. They'd rather buy into predictability by virtue of a process than randomly or haphazardly transact and throw money at an issue. So that is profound. So make sure at a minimum, you get to know Ted better on LinkedIn. Just look for him there. We'll provide details in the description in terms of how you can reach him directly. But Ted, I always get way more out of these conversations, I'm sure, than you do. So this is no exception. So thanks very much for this. And I'm sure we are going to pick this back up sooner than later. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Duncan. A lot of fun. Good luck to all the advisors out there. We're in such a great business. Don't worry about the coronavirus or what's happened politically. You just focus on these key activities and it'll all work out.
I completely agree. Okay, man, you take it easy. Thanks.
Thank you.